So we are live. Welcome everyone to the second episode of Step Up with Natasha. First of all, a very big thanks to all of you who tuned in last night to watch this episode, and all of you who showered with all your love on that very first episode, and also reached out to me personally. It was a very overwhelming feeling for me for that all of you were there at the very defining moment of my life and supported me. So thank you so much. And today I have a very exciting guest with me, Mr. Francisco Mahfuz, who is a keynote speaker and a world class storyteller. He's, in fact, the national champion of public speaking. He has had his book out called Bear, a Guide to Brutally Honest Public Speaking. People who have heard him or whom he has trained, they say that he just takes away all the stress out of public speaking, and whenever this man is on the stage, he just leaves you in splits. So even before speaking to him, I knew that this conversation is going to be very interesting because this is going to be fun. So welcome on board, Francisco. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for taking out your time for this conversation, and I'm really excited to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me, Natasha. And nowadays we are locked at home, so I
Yeah.
take every opportunity I can not to have to stare at the same three people all day, or do the dishes for the fifth time in that day.
I get it. I get it. In fact, that is one question I would definitely like to delve deeper into the conversation. So, people, he's tuning in with us from Spain, where the situation is still a little not that pleasant. These people are still going to get out once in a day and trying to get the groceries and everything. I guess that's a similar situation everywhere around the world. But very grateful to Francisco that even in all this, and with the family and with all his online commitments, he's taken out time to do this with me. So thank you so much. And now, going back to the time when you got initiated into public speaking, I remember that you said that you were always that kid who was not very afraid of, actually, or shy of public speaking. You used to be the one that teachers used to rely on you, that okay, you go and speak something. But how did it become your passion to the extent that you are now like literally living it every day? What was the story behind that?
As many things in life, I guess it was just an accident. It's I don't know if it happens to everybody, but I'm remarkably dumb. It takes me a long time to realize things that other people have realized before. So I always liked speaking. I liked speaking in class. I liked speaking when I was an English teacher back home in Brazil. And every job I had, the part I liked most was getting up in front of people and speaking. It never occurred to me once that maybe I should do that more. Just never. And then one day, a client of mine said, "Listen, there's this club I'm part of. It's called Toastmasters, and it's public speaking. I think you would enjoy it. Do you want to go?" And I'm like, "Oh, sounds, I don't know, terrible, but I'll do it." And obviously, I enjoyed it. And this was about a decade ago. And as soon as I started doing it, I loved it, wanted to do more of it. But again, still dumb. Never realized that maybe when I got good at it, I should maybe do it professionally, until someone asked, I think for the third time, "Listen, you're good at this thing. Are you sure you don't want to be doing it professionally?" And I said, Actually, now that you asked me for the third time, maybe that makes sense." So here I am.
So it basically took you a day job and a lot of support and encouragement by a lot of other people to make you realize that this is what you should be doing more and more often, right?
I'm not sure I would call it encouragement. It was like, we were spending a lot of time at this, and you are good. Why the hell are you not doing it for money?
That's
And
true.
it just,
That's
again, I think it's a lot of people have this where, so you have some people where they love something or very passionate about something, and in their minds that's all they want to do. Maybe they like
right.
painting and they think painting is their life and they really want to have that as their career. Where you have other people that don't necessarily associate their job with the thing they're passionate about. So you're doing a job, it's paying the bills, you're reasonably good at it, and you have this other thing you love, and you just don't make the connection. Well, hold on, maybe this other thing I love, if I am good at it, maybe I should do that and not this job of doing. And that, I think, was part of my thinking. And now that I'm making that switch, I realize how if you are good at something that has commercial value and
Yeah.
it's your passion, then you're much better off doing that than doing whatever else is just paying the bills. Yeah.
That's so true. I think what you said is that for most of us, our passion is actually just a stress buster. It's like,
Mm.
we have a day job that helps us in making our ends meet. But then this is a stress buster which actually relaxes us when we are too much drained or too much overwhelmed by our work. Very rightly said, sometimes we're just not able to connect the dots.
And there's it's also true that a lot of our stress busters, as you call them, don't have any real commercial value. For example, I'm a big reader. I read obsessively. No one's going to pay me to read. There might be things I can do that might have some type of value. That someone might pay me to. If I run a book club and it's super popular, but I mean, most hobbies don't necessarily translate that easily to a career. It
Yeah.
just seems to be lucky for me that the one thing that is my hobby translates very well to a career. But I don't think that's always the case.
Okay. So basically, what you're saying is that a lot of times we are not able to find a proper outlet of a passion in terms of making money out of it, right?
Yeah, I think some things, and this goes for careers as well. There's some careers that pay very well, and some careers which are arguably a lot more important that don't pay very well. And right
Yeah.
now we're seeing that clearly because I mean doctors are typically very well paid, but nurses are not. And now
Yeah.
nurses are very clearly essential workers. Even delivery people that work in supermarkets, you would never consider those great careers, but now, when we're in the middle of a crisis, these are essential jobs, but they don't get this, they don't get paid for how essential they are. And I think that that's true as well as of hobbies that you might try and develop into something else. Some
Right.
things, if you are very, very good, you should definitely do as a career, where some things maybe not so much. Or maybe you're a good singer, right? It's very, very hard to make money and have a career as a singer. I know amazing singers, incredibly talented people, and they still struggle to make that what pays the bills. So it's a difficult balance to find where the passion should be the job and where the passion should remain as the hobby or the stress
As a
buster
hobby.
or the outlet, as you said.
Yeah. So then, if we talk about them, then how good a profession is public speaking in terms of that?
Public speaking is, I'm not going to say it's easy, and it's a career I've started recently,
Yeah.
but there is established market. So there are people who get paid to speak all over the world. They
Right.
get paid from okay money to incredible. I don't believe someone is paying that for a speech money. And and there is a very clear path to follow as well. And this is
Yeah.
sometimes the difficulty is, okay, some people are getting paid maybe to be actors or artists, but it's not
Right.
very clear what are the steps you need to take to become one of those people. With professional speaking, there is a pretty clear path. I mean, every speaker that you hear describing their journey, I mean, there's essentially two or three major paths. One is you are a very famous person in one area of your life, and then people start paying you to speak about it. This happens a lot to writers. It happens to
Right.
politicians after they leave the office. But again,
Right.
perhaps not the easiest thing to do. You get people that do something like a TED or TEDx talk, and that explodes, and from that they make it into a career. Again, also not the easiest thing to do. And you just get people who are good at speaking. They develop what area they want to be speaking about. Then you build a website. You start making yourself a little more known in the social media world, and then you just have to prospect like a lot of other jobs prospect. So you contact companies, you contact conferences, and you say, "This is who I am. This is a little video showing me speaking. I think I'll be the right person for your next event." And if you
Right.
do enough of that, and you are a good speaker, you will speak. And the more you speak, the more you speak. So
Right.
it's a path that if you just follow the steps should work as long as you're good enough. Whereas a lot of other careers, you just don't really know how to get from zero to hero. And public
Right.
speaking, luckily, is not one of those.
Okay. So, like you said, that some people just know how to do it, and they even have a affinity towards it. But then, public speaking is something that has baffled all of us, right? Because standing up there on the stage and being confidently actually conveying your message out. But then, why are certain people, and I'm not even talking about public speaking, I'm talking about there's certain people who are not even able to communicate their message clearly, right? What is it that goes wrong? Is it that the clarity of their own message is not clear in their head, or is there no structure in what they're trying to say?
Both. So
Both.
let me start at the end. Let me start with the
Okay.
clarity of the message.
Yeah.
It's very rare to find someone who has had to have a clear message as essential to their job or to their survival. You
Right.
take, for example, salespeople, right? A
Okay.
salesperson should be able to tell you in very few words what exactly their product is and what it does for you. Even that being the case, a lot of salespeople can't, and that's a critical issue. If I ask anyone, describe your job in 10 words or less, and do that in a way that it talks about the benefit to me and not what the job description is. It's a difficult exercise. A lot of people can't do it. I might struggle to do it because if I say I'm a keynote speaker on storytelling, I'm telling you exactly what I do. I'm not telling what I do for you. All right. So you should know, okay, fine. I know what a keynote speaker is. I know what storytelling is. I understand what you do. Okay. But you don't get why anyone would want a keynote speaker on storytelling. So then I have to
Right.
say something like, I teach people how to tell stories that other people want to hear, or I teach
Right.
you to tell stories people care about. And even that might not be enough because you might say, okay, but stories for what? I don't want to be a storyteller. I don't want to be a writer. So, okay, so I teach you to tell stories so you can engage, sell, or inspire other people. Okay, then you get into something a bit more concrete. All right, so I,
Right.
I, I, I teach you to get your message across to your customers through storytelling. Fine. Then you start finding, okay, but that's not easy. It takes
Yeah.
3 or 5 tries if you know what you're doing. And a lot
Right.
of people never felt they had to do it, never got taught how to do it. And that's a big problem. And that's a big problem in normal communication, and that's a big problem in public speaking. And
Public
and
speaking.
to tackle your first point about why some people are good at it and some people are baffled by it. One thing that is a bit of it's not a mystery, it's a myth, is that some people are just good at it. I think most people that don't do public speaking or that don't do public speaking well have no idea how much effort it goes into it and how much time it goes into it. So for
Yeah.
example, if I had so I did a 12-minute, I think it was 15-minute presentation at a conference in January, right? And it was a pretty relaxed thing. It was actually sort of the company that sort of my day job, and they wanted me to speak, and they said speak about whatever you want. So I wanted to do something funny because it was a sort of a Christmas party type of event, and they said talk about whatever you want, and I said I'm going to make fun of other people. That's okay. Yes, that's okay. And I have a lot of material because I know these people, I know the company and the industry, and so it's not something I have to research. Even so, it probably took me maybe 3 or 4 hours to write that 15-minute speech and to make
Right.
it good. And then I might have spent, 15 minutes at a time of practice. I might have practiced that for maybe 7 or 8 hours.
Okay.
So I would practice it 2 or 3 times every day, every other day for a week or two before, and then I practice maybe 3, 4 times the day before and 3, 4 times the day of. That's a lot of time that goes into it. And
Right.
most people do presentations that are important to their job and their career, and they hardly spend time writing them, they hardly prepare them, and then they wonder why they get up there and they don't sound that great or they freeze. I probably would freeze if I just wrote it, okay, well, I think I know what I'm saying, and got up there. I wouldn't remember what I'm supposed to say. And if I did, it wouldn't be any good. So there's a lot of work that goes into it that people just don't know about, because if they did the work, most of the problems of public speaking go away.
Okay. So basically, you're saying that you really need to practice, practice, and practice till the time it gets into you. But that brings me to another point that I have heard that yes, practice is good, but you should also not rehearse it so much that
Mm.
it comes across as scripted, because that just takes away the whole spontaneity factor about it. So, how much one should practice?
There is this thing that I think actors typically say, which is, if you sound rehearsed, is because you haven't rehearsed enough. So actors, stage actors, rehearse a lot. I mean, they're not improvising to sound natural. They're rehearsing so the words are so deep inside their brain that, or actually say to the forefront of their brain, they don't have to think about it. They know what the next line is. Right? So if I ask you to say, your name and where you're from, that line will come off naturally. You don't have to think about it. Say, okay, now try to sound funny when you say it. Try to sound sad when you say it. You can do that because all you're worrying about is your facial expressions and your body language. But if I say, okay, Natasha, tell me about what you think the meaning of life is, and now do it in a funny way. You don't know the answer. You don't know what the meaning of life is. You have to think about it, and that's what your brain is busy doing, thinking about it. So the way I tend to practice is, I practice until, not necessarily word for word, but until the meaning of what I'm trying to say with a particular sentence is in my head. It doesn't matter if I'm going to say, I'm a keynote speaker on storytelling and I focus on trying to help people get their message across to their customers. I could also say, I teach storytelling through keynote speeches because I want people to get their message across. That's fine. Both lines are essentially the same, but I want to be able to get that line with all the specific points in it without having to think about it. When you can do that, you have rehearsed enough, and then you can worry about other things. Some people will worry about, how are you going to move on the stage? Are you going to use slides? How do you incorporate the slides? Are you going to do something different with your voice? Is there a point of your presentation where you have to maybe slow things down? Or is there a point where you have to be a lot faster to change the room? And all of these things can only come when the words are not something you need to try and remember on the point. Because most people, myself included, are not great improvisers. You get up there and you go, what was I trying to say exactly? So I suggest to most people is, say you have a 5-minute presentation, and I would just write down some bullet points and turn the clock on, or the chronometer on, and start talking. See what happened in 5 minutes. Did you get all your points? If you got all your points, then just keep doing that until it just feels a bit more fluid, and that's about fine. If you're not getting your points, then maybe you need to rehearse a little more closely to write the sentences down and try to do them. And once you more or less know what they are, then don't worry so much about getting the words right, because a few words here and there make no difference. But that is true. I mean, I think that you can only go up on stage and sound supernatural when you're talking about something you know very, very well. And it's not an approach I would suggest to almost anyone if the presentation is very important. I think rehearsing without memorizing is the way to try to do it.
Okay, but so what a lot of times what happens is that, and that has happened once with me as well, that's why I can relate to it, whatever you said, that a lot of times, no matter how much I have practiced looking into the mirror and rehearsed it, the moment you get on the stage, and I don't know why the world looks such a scary place standing on this stage, but it's just something about that, and one flash of all the people sitting in the audience looking at you, and you just forget everything. And at that point of time, no matter how much you have rehearsed, it's like that one moment you are just blank, and you how is there any one mindset hack that one should practice to not actually let that get into you, or to still be in the zone and go for the kill?
There are a few. The first one, and this is not a hack, and it's something I've already talked about, is practicing. Because practicing is not just practicing the one speech. And again,
Right.
and I would suggest not doing it in front of the mirror because it's so artificial and you worry
Yeah.
too much about what your face looks like. And again, if you have a face like me, which is kind of made of rubber, I keep, okay, well, this eyebrow is this is a bit weird. What's happening here? So don't practice in front of the mirror. So practice is you practice your specific speech. But then what you
Okay.
should try and do is practice it in front of other people. So you do it to your partner or to some of your friends. But more important than any of that is that the one time you're getting up to do a presentation is not the important presentation, is not the first time you're getting up to do a presentation. You should be taking every opportunity you have to speak in public, because one day there will be a very important presentation you need to do in public, and you want this to be your 20th or your 100th presentation, not your first or second. So
Right.
that's, and this is why things like Toastmasters are a great idea, because it just builds in that practice and it becomes a lot. I mean, I don't know anyone that freezes after having done something like Toastmasters for more than a couple of months. You know, the first time you freeze, the second time you freeze less, the third time you don't really, and then it just becomes second nature. Now, still difficult, but that is out of the way. But for hacks, one hack, which is a psychological one, is just understanding that is not about you, it's about your message. So no one cares if you look good on stage, if you sound good on stage. They care about, are you giving me something of value? If you are giving them something of value, they will forgive everything and might even like you more because you're not this super polished professional speaker. They'll say, oh, it's just a person like me, when there's a lot of connection when that happens, and this person has a very useful or meaningful thing to say. So worry about getting the message out. Can you get the message out through stuttering, through falling over on stage, through looking silly? Because if you can, that's it. That's the important part. The second one is very basic, but a lot of people don't realize this. A lot of speakers, new speakers, think that the way to look at the audience is to look at everyone. Right? You got a room and you're sort of looking at the room. And that's completely wrong. What you should do is look people in the eye. And you know, if I'm doing this camera thing right, it should right now look like I'm looking to you. And that helps. If I do this, now I'm looking at your face in the camera, you're not getting my eyes. If I do
Right.
this, we are connecting. And
Yeah.
what that means is you don't need to speak to 100 people. You need to speak to maybe 3, 4, 5, depending on the size of the room. So you pick this friendly person sitting over there and you talk to them for 2 or 3 sentences, and then you pick the next friendly person in the middle and you talk to them for 2 or 3 sentences, and you keep moving. And some people plant their friends in the audience, so they just look at their friends when they talk, and that's it. Because if you do it throughout the whole room will feel that you are giving people individual attention. It doesn't matter that you haven't looked at every single person. And then you don't get this crazy feeling of, I'm talking to all these people and this is insane and this is horrifying and scary. You're just like, oh, this person seems friendly. I'll talk to you for a little bit. And then I'll talk to you for a little bit. And that's all there is to it. And again, the practice, I think, is the most important part. But it does help to know that in the vast majority of cases, the worst that will happen is that it just won't go that well. You know, that's the worst case scenario for most people, right? Nobody's gonna throw stones at you. No one's gonna run out to you and shout in your face how bad you were. They'll feel bad for you if it's really bad. They'll feel sorry for you because it's really bad. They're not gonna be aggressive. They're not gonna be violent to you. I hope. So it's more about practice. Remember that it's about a message and not about you. Look a few people in the eye, and that helps to get rid of a lot of the nerves. But the nerves are always there. I get them. Experienced speakers get them. We just understand the nerves as excitement. Right? They feel very similar, and that's pretty much what it is most of the time. It's not real fear. It's just adrenaline in your body.
Okay. So, if before I then go on the stage, the best thing I should do is that actually scan through the room
Mm.
before I get on the stage and look for people who looks friendly and sort of maybe create my allies. So when I'm looking at them and there is an instant connect. So is one of
There's actually a better way to do that. If you have an opportunity to be around public before your speech, talk to
Yes.
people. So talk to as many people that are going to be on the audience as you can before. Say hi to them. Say, comment, oh, I'm going to be the speaker, whatever. If it's natural enough in the conversation, say, yeah, no, I'm a bit nervous, but I really want to get this message out. And people will know you before you get on stage. And sometimes that alone is enough to have some allies. Because the moment you get on stage can be pretty scary, and the
Yeah.
room and the lights and everything can be scary. But as much as you possibly can, try to mingle with people in the audience before you get up, because then you find that people will like you before you get on stage, and that helps a lot.
Okay, so is that what you also do before? I mean, what is your ritual before you go on the stage? Because I'm sure that, there would be days that you would not be very excited giving a public
Mm,
presentation. Be like, okay, I just have to pass through this. So in those days, is there
mm,
any ritual? Is there any process that you follow right before you
mm.
go on stage to make you feel in the zone?
I'm not sure my process is one that I should tell people to imitate, but I mean, I practice a lot. So I will practice up until a few hours before the event. Depending on the event, I'll be practice. I mean, depends on the setup, right? Sometimes I can practice until maybe an hour before. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes I have to be in the conference, and then I can't practice for 3 or 4 hours. Then I might still try to find a moment to just pop outside and just run through some of the lines, the first lines and the closing lines. Again, depends on how long the speech is as well. But I will try to speak to everyone I can before. And
Okay.
usually just before I get on stage, I would just nervously crack my neck and pull my socks up for some reason. I have no idea why. And then I just try and put a big smile on my face just before I go out, because that's one thing that makes a big difference is the moment you step on stage, you want to be looking confident and happy to be there. So everyone that ever sees me walking on a stage, it will always be like this, and I'll have a big smile for the person presenting me, and I'll put my hand out and I'll shake their hand and I'll stay there and smile until the audience calms down, because you don't want to start with a whole bunch of noise in the room. And if you're just
Yeah.
standing there and smiling, it makes you look super confident, even if you're not. And people
Okay.
wait, and at some point they'll quiet down, right? And that, just doing that without trying, without asking people to calm down, that alone settles me enough that when I start, I'm starting in my own time. I'm not hurrying, and I'm not, oh, but these people are still talking. I'll just stand there and smile and look at everyone. And when they stop, I take a deep breath and I start. And that tends to help for me.
So, in that sense, do you actually feed on the audience energy to give a great speech, or is it the other way around? That, like you said, that when you're there standing and smiling and feeling confident, and the audience get that vibe, and then they flow with you. Like, which one is more dominant over here?
As much as I might think I'm a good speaker, it depends on the size of the room. I mean, if you have 15, 20 people, yeah, the speaker can very much control the energy in the room. If you have 200 people, becomes
Right.
a bit harder, also because they're louder than you if they want to be. But
Right.
it's an exchange. If you are energetic, if you are in a good mood, if you're clearly enjoying what you're doing, they will normally enjoy it too. And I work a lot with humor. I mean, it's very rare that I mean, I don't think I'll ever do anything that doesn't have a bit of humor in it. And when the humor works, that's great energy. You say something, they laugh. Even if they don't laugh that much, you make jokes about it. So there's one I've done before is I think I tried something, it didn't really work, and I said they didn't really laugh, and I said that was a difficult joke. You're gonna laugh on the way home, uh, or you're in a different city, I might be in Barcelona, and I say I'll say something, and I'll get some laughs, and I'll say, really, is that all? They love this one in Madrid, and then people laugh with you, and then you're sort of in the same boat, and that is amazing, and that's when public speaking becomes a very pleasurable. Is it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
with humor, it can be with more serious things, but when you feel that the audience is on the same energy level as you, and you're saying something perhaps sad or heartfelt, and you look at people, and they are looking at you, and they're nodding along, and their expression is like your expression, that's when you feel that there's a connection, and that's when public speaking is amazing on stage. Because if all we
Right.
felt was what you feel right before and right when you start, no one would do it. It would be terrible. But
Yeah.
but this is why people that do public speaking do a lot of it, because it gets very addictive to have that energy. I mean, it's the closest thing someone like me can have to being an artist and being in front of a crowd, maybe playing music or something. I don't have any musical talent whatsoever, but I can only
Right.
imagine what being in front of 1,000 people, when they are singing your songs, feels like. And the closest thing I can get to that is having people feel what I'm feeling when I speak.
So like you said, that humor is your thing, right?
Mm.
But again, humor can be very tricky. Like how safe is it actually to use
Mm.
humor for someone who's just starting out, or even
Mm.
someone who's not that humorous? Being funny on stage can be a bit backfire as well, because you need a lot of
Mm.
improvisation when you're being funny, right? So how
Mm.
much humor or funny one should be, and how
I,
safe is
I think the answer is you should be as funny as you can get away with. And by
it?
get away
Okay.
with, I mean you should be as funny as you can actually do effectively. If you're very funny, be as funny as you can be. No one has ever complained that a good speech or a good presentation was too funny. Of course, you need to have a message, you need to have content. It can't just be you telling jokes, otherwise you're a stand-up comedian. But I've seen incredible business presentations that we were laughing throughout the whole thing, and all the people that I know that were there remember that those presentations are the best presentations they've ever seen. So, but some people are very good at humor, some people are not good at all. So if you're not
Yeah.
good at all, you can say two or three things throughout 10 minutes just to lighten the mood a little, but you shouldn't be expecting to get big laughs out of it. If you
Right.
are a little better at it, you can have more humorous material in your speeches. And again, it's a practice and it's a learning, and you find that the more you do it and the more you practice and the more you study how to do it well, the better you get. I mean, I think I'm a lot funnier now than I used to be 3 4 years ago, because once I decided, okay, I have some talent for this, I practiced and I practiced and I tried, and some things worked, some things didn't work, but you just stick with it. And how safe is it? Well, I think, again, you if you're not super confident about putting humor in your material, there are easy ways to do it. So one easy way to do it is you don't use your own material, use quotes, right? So you find a funny quote about the subject you're talking about. So you don't have to be funny. Mark Twain has to be funny, or Barack Obama has to be funny. So just find
Right.
a funny quote and say, like Nelson Mandela said, and then you say something, right? I mean, Nelson Mandela might not be the funniest person to think of, but
Yeah.
I have a
But I
friend.
get
I have a friend who's Indian, accidentally, Girish Pramani, and he's very funny. He won humorous competitions around Europe, and he does this thing where he picks something he wants to say, and then he picks someone that I would never have said this as the quote. So I remember him saying, as Mahatma Gandhi said, I hate these bloody smartphones. And obviously there were no smartphones in Gandhi's time, so people laugh because it's just absurd. So there's
Yeah.
tricks you can use to make yourself funny without having to be funny. But the safest thing is always make fun about yourself. And that's what I try to do more often than not. The jokes are always about me. I'm, as they call it, the butt of the joke. So it's about how incompetent I am, how silly my hair looks, how a bad husband I am, or how terrible, whatever. So it's always like I'm always the bad one in the joke. And then people can't, I mean, they can disagree, but they can't be offended by it, right? So, if I say, if my wife is always a poor wife that suffers because she has this idiot of a husband, it's pretty safe. All right, I'm not going to get into trouble for making those types of jokes or humorous comments. When you get into trouble is when you start trying to make fun of other things or other people, because someone can take offense. They can think you are belittling other people. So make fun of yourself, and make fun of yourself about things that are not sensitive. So don't make fun of yourself about your race. Don't make fun of yourself for your sexual orientation. I mean, you can, but you're treading on dangerous ground there. It, make fun of things you do, not things you are, and that tends to get you in safer ground. But again,
Oh,
it's a feeling. Some people have that feeling, and it just comes very naturally to them. Some people don't. And I would suggest that it's always worth trying to put humor in your speeches, because it just people like it, and it breeds a connection. But as with anything else in speaking, you need to practice to get really good at it. And I don't think anybody is born amazingly good at being funny in public speaking.
right. So, like the examples that you gave me right now, how should one figure out their own style of speaking? Because you knew that you're humorous, and like you said, that there can be certain people who are not that humorous. They might
Mm.
use some quote, but how should I be what I am and be
Mm.
really good at speaking? How should I figure out my own style of speaking?
The answer is pretty simple, and I might say, figure out the type of speaker you are by speaking, and some things will come naturally to you, and because most of it is in the writing. So for example, one of the things in Toastmasters, the first speech in Toastmasters is the icebreaker. So you just want to, break the ice metaphorically about who you are and introduce yourself to the club. And some people will just tell a story about their life. Some people will talk about all the things that people think they are. I started, my first speech was, I was talking about how we don't really know who we are, and who we are changes throughout time. And am I still the same person I was 10 years ago? And all the cells in my body change every 7 years. So am I still the same person I was 7 years ago? But again, that's just my sensibility for writing. And
Yeah.
whatever you feel like writing and you feel like telling people, you will know that. I think it's not common that if I say to you, try to write something funny, that doesn't work. But if I say to you, tell me a story, you might tell me a dramatic story, or you might tell me a story about you doing all sorts of silly things. And you will find that when you get on stage, some things work and some things don't work so well. And you find that some things you like doing and some things you don't. You might get a laugh and go, oh, I really like that. I mean, that part of the speech was the bit I really enjoyed. Okay, well, if the silly part you enjoyed, try to do more silly speeches in the future. If you like the serious parts, try to do more serious
Serious
speeches.
speech.
But it's again, we are human beings. We don't have one single side to us. So I actually find that playing with the different types of speech is what makes them so powerful, because so for example, there is a speech, if you go on my website, there is a speech there, and it was ostensibly about money, but I talk about a whole bunch of other stuff. And at one point I was talking about a whole bunch of mistakes people make about money. And then there is a line where I say, I must admit, I make mistakes too. I got married when I was 23. I got divorced when I was 24. I
I've heard.
never wanted children, and now I have two. But my worst mistake was staying at a job I hated, and it almost killed me. So, the humor is there. I'm trying to get a laugh, and I got a laugh. But now I'm moving into something a lot more serious. And sometimes that contrast is what makes it work. Because if all my speeches are about the serious stuff, they're just emotionally draining. You don't want to hear a sad story that goes on for 10 minutes, let alone if it's an hour-long keynote. You can have sad or deep moments in there, or you can try to have wisdom in there. But if you're just trying to do that for the whole thing, it's just, can I get a break? So I think every human being will have all these aspects to them. They will not be as good at everything on stage, but they will find, or you will find, what you like and what you don't like by doing it. And the more you do it, the more you figure out what your voice is, both in writing and as a speaker. And when you figure out what your voice is, you just do that, and then people listen to you speak, or they will listen to or read what you write, and they say, it just sounds like I'm talking to you. And to me, that's the greatest compliment of anyone's writing, assuming you're not trying to write fiction, right? Or fiction, that doesn't work. But if I'm writing a speech, or if I'm writing a non-fiction book like my book, I want people to feel they're in a conversation with me. And that's when you know you got the voice right, because sometimes you're funny, sometimes you're serious, sometimes you're deep, sometimes you're sad, and it just feels like a human being communicating.
So if I'm starting out, then I should not put that pressure on me that I really have to figure out my style of speaking. I should experiment with whatever I have, and then whatever I'm comfortable with, then I should decide on, this is what I should be using more and more, right?
Yeah, yes, and that goes for speaking, and that goes for any form of expression. If you communicate on social media, for example, I
Yeah.
only started about 3 months ago to actually post on social media. And
Okay.
it's not obvious to me, it wasn't obvious to me what my voice was. I mean, I had just written a book, so that helped a lot. But even when I wrote the book, it took me maybe the first few chapters to sound like me. I just
Right.
didn't sound like me. I was trying too hard. I was too serious. And then when you find that, then it's just natural. You just have to try. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about anything when you're starting to speak. Just the fact you're speaking is the achievement. And as you
Yeah.
speak more, you start sounding more like you, and people go, "Oh, and Natasha is this type of speaker, or this type of speech is what she does." And once you feel more confident, then you can surprise them by showing sides of yourself that perhaps you just weren't confident to show before. Again, it's in a way, think of the audience as any relationship you're starting. You're not fully you, or at least you're not the best version of you right at the start. It takes a while to feel comfortable. It takes a while to stop trying to give a certain image and just
Yeah.
be who you are. And the stage is a bit like that. Everybody's a bit artificial in the beginning. Everybody's trying a little too hard or is just too shy. And the more you do it, the more it's just you. You're just getting up there and doing your thing. And again, it's not 100% you doing your thing, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes in speaking that is very unnatural to us. But the more you do it, the more it's just an extension of you.
So you also mentioned in one of these things, you said that if you're not funny, then you can use someone's quote, right? So
Yeah.
I heard that because beginning of the public speaking is the most important thing, which we call grab. Now, generally, what we say is that grabber can have three things: either use a very strong statistic, or use a very strong story, or use a quote. Now,
Mhm.
I understand that how much of is it redundant now, or has there something new which has come up and taken over? And if these things are still valid, then
Mhm.
how can someone make it still sound so different using any of it? That
Right.
you different, yeah.
So you call them grab 'em, or
Grabber, that's what
grab
they
'em.
call them.
Okay.
Grabber.
I hadn't heard that term before. Yeah, so the
I
introduction
was
is the
figured
introduction is
out.
perhaps the most important part, not because that's what the most important message of a speech is, but just because if you don't get the audience's attention early on, you're really going to struggle to get it later. If you're
Right.
boring them for a minute or two, even if you get amazing later, they might have just checked out already. And now that a lot of the stuff is online, they will check
Right.
out and you won't know, because they'll be on their phone, they'll be looking at the screen, but they're actually reading something else. So the beginning is essential. If you mess up the beginning, it's difficult to recover from it. The
Yeah.
way I teach people to do it, I came up with these three letters that are not as dirty as they sound, but I call people I said that your introduction should be WTF. And most people know what WTF stands for. That's not what it stands for me. For me, it stands for weird, thought-provoking, or funny. So those are the three types of things I'm trying to do when I start a speech. It could be a statistic, what you mentioned, that's the one that a lot of people love to use, and I never remember it exactly, which is, I think there's more people alive today than have ever died, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Something like that will go, oh, really? So that kind of effect is what you want. So you could think of that as thought-provoking, or you could say
Right.
something just very strange. Right? I remember I started a speech saying, "What is the smell of love?" I was like, "What?" And so you want to make people think, and questions are very good for that. You ask a question, and the brain automatically starts trying to
Yeah.
answer the question. If you can be funny, you should be funny. Although, again, it's not the easiest thing in the world to be funny straight out of the gate. But quotes are great for that. You can just use quotes for whatever you're trying to do. So you say, for example, you're talking about, I don't know, you're talking about drinking or wine or whatever, right? And I know there's a Frank Sinatra quote that says, "I'm sorry for people who don't drink, because when they wake up, that's as good as they will feel all day." Right? So you just say that,
Yeah.
you say, well, that was Frank Sinatra, but I agree with him. So it kind of sounds like you were saying it, and
Yeah.
you didn't have to write it. You just type, okay, wine, funny quotes, and there will be hundreds. So
Right.
that, I think that that start where you're using a strange statistic or a strange fact, or you ask an interesting question, you can just use a word. Like I have seen speeches where the speaker just got up there and said fear and said nothing else. And you're like, fear? Well, fear of what? I mean, what, something like, and even that, something as simple as that can work, because now your brain is sort of, okay, what comes next? So it is very important, and I think the beginning of the speech is something people should put a lot of work in and should rehearse, because that's definitely not the point where you want to miss words. And the beginning connects to the end. So whatever you start a speech with should be reflected at the end of the speech, because then it gives people that feeling of closing the circle, right? So the moment you start talking about Frank Sinatra, or I'm sorry for people who don't drink, they go, okay, now this story is ending, and it helps a lot give a sense of closure. Okay, you took us on a journey, we started here, and now we're back to where we started, and that's a good feeling when you're watching a speaker or hearing a story. So the introduction is very important, and it very much still applies, and I think applies more now, because so easy to check out online. You want to make sure people are with you from the beginning.
But I have also seen certain, of course, I'm not talking about public speakers, I'm talking about like general people who are like called on the stage and say something.
Yeah.
So when people are nervous, their opening or grabber, as I should say this, they start with that I'm sorry, I apologize if I'm being nervous.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Now, right, or how much is that wrong? But
Terrible.
made me connect with the point that how much vulnerability is good when you are presenting on stage.
Hmm.
And if that's good, then how can I be confidently vulnerable that I don't end up looking like a fool?
Vulnerability is essential, and there's times when it works better than others. And I don't have any problem with someone being vulnerable right at the start. I just don't think that apologizing is ever a good idea, because you're apologizing for things that are in your head. The audience doesn't necessarily think, oh no, she's nervous, she should really apologize. No one thinks that way. You miss a word and people say, so, I'm sorry. No one is expecting you to apologize. They don't even know you've made a mistake. So you
Yeah.
just take away from your credibility when you keep doing that. I spoke the other day. I have a podcast I'm just about to launch, and I interviewed a speaker, and she said that her very first public speaking opportunity, she just before she got on stage, she fell over. So she was trying to get out of her chair and fell over, and everybody saw her falling over. And she got up on
Yeah.
stage and said something like, "Well, you saw that, so the speech can only get better from now on." Right? That's amazing, right? Because it's funny. You're not taking yourself too seriously, and
Right.
it's you being vulnerable. That sort of thing is incredible. I've seen a Spanish comedian that had a pretty thick accent saying he was doing a gig in English, and he got up on stage and said, my accent is my first joke. And people laugh, right? So I think it's absolutely fine to go up there and say something that could be amusing, that makes fun of yourself. But that's what we just said. This is you saying something funny at the beginning. You just being super apologetic about how crap it's going to be. It's not going to help people not think it's crap. So again, people should feel comfortable with whatever they're doing. And I don't think anyone should go up there and try to get this complicated humorous setup that they're never going to pull off. But just get a quote and just say, could get up there and say, I would like to start, we wouldn't say that, just say, as Mahatma Gandhi said, blah, blah. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, right? I mean, it's pretty simple. There's nothing terribly nerve-wracking about it, but it will, you say, as Mahatma Gandhi said, people go, okay, someone with authority now, I'll listen. So again, people can take this stuff too seriously, right? I think is at the end of the day, do your best. There are ways to do it better. Practice as much as you can. Don't assume it's going to be easy. But we've all had, everyone that speaks has had bad pitches or bad starts or bad finishes. It's part of the job. I mean, it's a performance, and as any performance, sometimes it goes better, sometimes not so much. What it's not typically is life or death, right? And we should remember that. And didn't work the way you wanted. Learn from the lesson, practice more, get better, and the next time it won't be so bad.
Right, right. So this is okay. So the point that I'm coming to it right now, that is one of my favorites. Okay. I've seen a lot of people using metaphors when they're doing public speaking, and metaphors has certain sort of charm, right? I mean, it just beautifully weaves the story, gives out the message. The person who's listening will be like, wow, I mean, such beautiful amalgamation of two concepts. But how should one create metaphors? I have literally YouTubed a lot of ways, but some are really funny, some works. But according to you, what is that correct way to actually figure out how to create a good metaphor?
A metaphor works because it's a mini story. A
Yeah.
metaphor is a type of analogy. So you're comparing one thing to another, and that's one of the reasons stories work so well in speeches is because I've now given you this example of something that we're going to relate to something else. A metaphor is just a condensed version of that. So
Right.
what was the one I heard? Not heard. The one I actually said to someone that we were talking about public speaking, and she said, but if you're not that good at it, should you do it? And I said, well, what most people consider to be good public speaking are things like TED Talks, right? Or you watch a professional speaker doing it. But this is like watching the Olympics or the World Cup and deciding, oh, I'm never going to be that good, so I shouldn't play football, right? Which is a ridiculous argument. Just because you're not going to be among the best in the world doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Shouldn't do.
How do you create metaphors? I don't actually have a system for it. I mean, sometimes when I'm writing, I might be thinking of a story and saying, I don't have time to tell the story. So I'm just going to get the main point of the story and condense it, right? So for example, I'm just trying to think of something I've used recently. Right. The other day I was giving my 3-year-old daughter, a bath, right?
Okay.
And she was starting to look a bit upset. And I said, what's the problem? And she says, oh, my toys aren't here, because she was playing with the toys outside, didn't bring them back in. And I said, I'm sorry, but it's late now. I'm not going to go outside to get your toys. You're going to have to have a bath without the toys. And I could see now the lip started going, and it was like, oh, she's going to start crying. She's going to wake up the baby. It's going to be terrible. And then I just looked around the bathroom and said, oh, but hold on. There's all these mysterious products your mother uses in her hair. Why don't you play with those? You can pretend that they are cars or ships or airplanes. And she looked at me and she said, can I do that? And I said, of course. And then she started playing. It was the happiest bath of her life. And at the end, she said, Papa, we can give all my toys away because I really prefer to play with these ones. And that got me thinking that we often focus on the one thing we think is going to make us happy. So it's, you want this phone, you want this car, you want this job. We actually don't want the thing. You want how the thing makes you feel. There's lots of things that will make you feel competent or authentic or happy. And if I wanted to make a metaphor out of that, maybe what I could do is say, you can be like a child playing with shampoo bottles in the bath, right? The thing that makes you happy is just something that allows you to play and express your creativity. It doesn't have to be that specific job or that specific thing you wanted to buy and don't have the money for, right? You can be like a child playing with the box where the toy comes in and ignoring the toy after a while. Again, I don't think it's necessarily the world's best metaphor, but I would just try and condense the story without telling the story. But I think you can find endless lists of metaphors online. If that's
Okay.
what you're trying to do, you just type metaphors or examples of metaphors or examples of funny metaphors, and
Right.
there will be,
Right.
I mean, hundreds and hundreds of
Right.
metaphors. Right. And
Right. No, because
that's what,
I
that's what I do. If I'm trying to find a comparison and I just cannot think of something, then that's what I'll do. I'll just Google something like that.
right. No, because I was trying to actually build it into practice to come up with creative
Mm,
metaphors, images of my own, because you like
mm.
talking about things that has come from you. So
Yeah.
that's I was trying to understand, is there any one particular process to set the metaphor? But I got it, what you said.
The process that I would use, and I don't know if this I do something very. It's not a method for me. I'm not saying okay, look for a method for now. Sometimes it just comes to me. But the
Right.
process would be you think of what's the characteristic you're trying to describe,
Mm.
and then think of whatever else is like that. So I did this one that was super popular on LinkedIn 2 months ago. I said, I've been locked in the house for 6 days.
Okay.
Uh, I see the same people over and over again. The what is it said? Oh, the kid keeps annoying me. The wife doesn't have any time for me. I'm in a terrible bad mood, and which is all kind of true. And then I thought, who who has that same experience? And then I thought, my cat. And then now I understand how my cat feels. Right. So it's just like, okay, so think of what are you trying to say? Well, someone who's in a house looking at seeing
Yeah.
the so it wouldn't work for a dog, right? Because dogs get out and stuff. So if you wanted to say, I have this friend. You have a friend who every time you go, no, it's like every time I go now after the lockdown, just seeing people on the streets is gonna make me happy. Just being outside is gonna make me happy.
Yeah.
I'll be grinning like an idiot for everything.
That's how my dog
I'll become a
feels
dog.
like.
Right. Yeah. So you're just looking for the characteristic and what else has that
Characteristics, right?
characteristic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one. I think that I can use that one.
Yeah.
That was really
Steer away. Yeah. There's a line I love, and it's not mine, which is when someone asks, I think a comedian, what is your aspiration in life? What would I think they were talking about self-development, and he said, so what's the end goal? I mean, what would you like to become? And he said,
right.
I would like to be the person my dog thinks I am.
That's actually got pretty famous. I heard. I remember this one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. And it's like, you know exactly what I mean. Like, exactly.
Yeah.
Or you could say, I don't want to be the person my cat thinks I am. Right. So,
Good one. Good one. Okay. So, I mean, we have got on the stage, we have given a speech, then it starts proceeding towards the end, where then the audience starts asking you questions, right?
mm,
At the moment, because
right.
I think most of the time it's the dialogue that we're having within our own head that makes us very nervous. But
Yeah.
at times it actually happens practically as well, that after the speech, when you open it for Q&A, and people has some negative comments to say, maybe, or they just have something negative about it. How do you handle that? Keeping good energy, not rude or offensive, and still, come across your point.
It's worth saying that that's not typically the experience most public speakers have, because speeches and keynote speeches are not usually followed by Q&A, right? And I
Okay.
prefer them not to be. Not that I have no issue with Q&A. I actually like Q&A, but I think it takes away from the climax of the speech. You've done something hopefully powerful. You left people with a message. You don't want to dilute that by doing Q&A after. But
Yeah.
sometimes you have to do it. I think you need to be prepared for what the counter arguments for whatever you're saying are. So one good exercise for speaking and for general conversation is, what is the best argument someone can make against what I'm saying? If
Hmm.
you can make it an argument and answer it back, you should be prepared for what most of the questions are. How do you deal with negativity? I think depends on what negativity. If someone's saying, what you just said is complete nonsense,
Hmm.
I think you just try and get to something specific that you can actually answer. You'd say, how so?
Right.
What makes you say that? Oh,
Right.
because this is not how that works. Okay, would you mind being a bit more specific so everybody can see your point? And then if
Right.
you try to do something specific and what they're saying is wrong, you can say, okay, well, I think it's an interesting take on that. My understanding from all the research I've done is this. So you'd
Right.
say, not you are wrong, but my understanding is,
Okay.
it's interesting to say that because most of the research I found makes the opposite point. Right? So you do it as politely as you can, and you just say, that's interesting. Avoid saying but that's interesting. Most of the research I found points the other direction, right? And
Right.
if people keep arguing, you can always just say, listen, I think it's a very interesting conversation, and I would love to continue it, but unfortunately, I think there's a few other people that also have questions. So if you want, we can continue after the session, right? Or something along those lines, because that's usually what happens. Is, I think if someone is just being negative for the sake of being negative,
Yeah.
all you can really do is saying, listen, if you don't have a specific point that I can counter, then
Yeah.
this might not be the best place for us to have this conversation. We can have it after everybody else asks their questions, but maybe I can answer. If they generally point to something that you didn't know, or that might be wrong in what you were saying, you could say that's very interesting. And can would you mind waiting after everyone else, because I want to get to the bottom of that and make sure that I didn't miss anything when I was speaking.
Right.
And that shows you are open to criticism, shows that you are willing to learn, but it doesn't have to say, oh, you're right, I was completely wrong. Can everybody completely ignore that bit of the speech? Right. Um,
Doesn't look nice. Yes. Of course.
you don't ever want to put anyone down if what they're saying is nonsense. You also don't want to, if they're talking about something completely different, you want to be able to say, uh, that's a very interesting point. What I think we should do is stick with what the topic that we were discussing here. I think you're going in a slightly different direction there. So you just
Right.
want to politely move it back to where everybody can have their questions or say, and also where it can be productive. If it's just not being productive, then there's no point in continuing having that conversation.
Right. As in, it is not serving whatever I'm talking about. So let's just
No,
carry it
it's not serving the Q&A. And it might
forward.
be the exact subject we're talking about. So say, for example, I just talked about the introduction as we did.
Right.
You can say, no, that's nonsense. You can definitely save a speech after 2 minutes if you do this and that. I would just say, that's quite an interesting point, and I would like to pick your brain about it because that hasn't been my experience with it, and it hasn't really been the experience of most of the speakers I know. But I would love to find out that I'm wrong because it would save some of the speeches that I thought were lost. So if you don't mind, I would like to talk about that more after the session. But
Right.
I would like to get to everything else questions.
Cool. So because you said that you don't mind Q&A, I can see there's some of the questions for you. So I'll just start with that. Okay. So one asked that, do you think going live every day for some time can make one a better speaker? That's a good question.
Yes.
I mean, that does that
I
really?
mean, I can elaborate, but yes, because although the live, I don't know about you, I don't
Yeah.
get I don't get the same nerves when I go live through the screen than I do on stage. It also depends what I'm doing. If I'm doing a speech, I still get some nerves by going live or by doing it on a recording. Whereas if it's just for me, Q&A is not. I don't get nervous at all with Q&A.
Right.
But whatever you do makes you nervous, do more of that. Right? If the
Yeah.
live you do get a bit nervous before going live, the more you do it, the more you get used to doing it.
Right.
100%. Doing less is never going to make anybody better at anything.
Hmm. True, true. I think I'll try the live thing to make myself a better speaker. Yeah. Okay. One more ask that do you have any visualization practice before going on stage? And I've heard that a lot of speakers actually visualize a lot of applause, a lot of people standing and doing like an applause for them. Do you also have such practice?
Not as such. I mean, I don't sit down quietly and imagine the audience laughing at my jokes, but that happens to a great extent with the writing and with the rehearsing, because that's what I'm doing when I'm writing. I'm trying to visualize how are people going to take this. Is this going to be funny? Is this going to work? So I'm having to play around in my head, good reactions, bad reactions, and that's the extent of that I'll visualize. And I think it is important to do that anyway, because if you're writing without having the audience in mind, eventually you're going to have to do that step. And for me, that step comes in the writing, or not so much in the writing. When I revise what I wrote, I write it down and go, okay, is this going to have the effect I expect? And then I play the line in my head and try to imagine it in the room. So that's how much I visualize. But I heard for a lot of people, to get rid of nerves, that's a very good thing, because they imagine walking on stage, they imagine how they'll feel, they imagine the audience, and then when they do it, it just feels, oh, I've done this before, even though you did it in your head.
Yeah. Okay, next question for you is that if you have a great story, but you are not a good communicator, does it work well?
Sorry, I missed that last bit. So if you have a great story, but you're not a good communicator.
You have a great story, but you're not a good communicator, does that work well?
I like saying that stories are, humanity's original superpower. And a good story will fix most of a speaker's issues. If you have a good story and you know the story, almost nothing you can do will screw up the story, as long as you tell it right. If you tell the story in the right order and it has all the right elements, it's almost impossible to screw it up. I mean, you can still do it, but it's a lot harder to do that badly compared to just talking normally, as a lot of people do in a speech. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I should still argue that people should tell stories as often as they can, and you will get better by telling stories. And for most speakers, particularly newer speakers, it's one of the easiest ways to not forget what you're supposed to say, because it's a story. I mean, if you know the story of, I don't know, when your family got to Brazil, in my case, or India or America, whatever it might be, I mean, you probably know that story and told it a number of times. If that story takes 3 minutes to tell and you're supposed to talk for 7, then tell the story for 3 minutes and then get the lessons out of the story for the next 4. That and then the most nerve-wracking part of your speech, which is the beginning, you will disappear because you know the story. All you have to do is tell the story. So yeah, by all means, that does work and it should be done.
Okay. Next is, how do you train your mind before you start speaking to the crowd? I want to know what exact things you set in your mind.
Sorry, again, the beginning, for some reason the call started cutting off there. So looking to the crowd, what's just before looking to the crowd?
Yeah, so what sort of dialogue that you have with your own self? What is that exact mindset that you set before you go speak to the crowd? Like the exact things.
I'm not sure I have an actual dialogue, because usually I have the material in my head. I have the stories in my head, and I have the first line, going over and over. The first lines are going over in my head, and just before, I don't think I have anything. I just have the adrenaline, and I have the expectation of having fun, because it's very rare now that I go on stage and don't have fun. So there is that combination of I'm really looking forward for this, but boy, do I feel nervous and excited and all these things. I don't tell myself stuff like, oh, this is going to be great. Oh, this is, in a sense, I just know that it's going to be fun. And as soon as I get the first lines out and I get the first laughs out, which is what I always try to do, then I relax into it. And then something very funny happens. And I don't think this is going to happen to most speakers until they've done it for a while. You stop thinking completely about the lines, and you have a dialogue running in your head, which is watching the audience. So you say, wow, that joke really worked. Can I do something else with this? Can I say something here? Can I bring it back a bit later? Or that person seems to really be enjoying this. I should say something about that. Or that person looks in a bad mood, or whatever. And when I'm relaxed and I practiced enough, that's what's going through my head, is I'm judging and making comments about my own performance and how I can make it better. And that's when I'm really sort of in what they call the flow state, or in the zone. That's when it's amazing. It's like, wow, this is really working. Play more on this, play more on that. Okay,
Right.
drop that line because it's not necessary.
And not necessarily.
That only comes again with experience, and it comes with having rehearsed so well that the words are second nature.
Right. Right. So basically, that happens. We're talking about improvisation over here. That when you go on stage and then you look at the reaction, and that's how you change accordingly, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll if a joke gets a lot of laughs, I would try
Yeah.
and make faces, or I did something stupid and that got laughs, and then I just go right, and then I go more right, and it's just kind of like
Right.
or if it doesn't work, you just move on faster. Or if I say something that's like that point didn't really work, I
Yeah.
know where the point comes back later, and I might just play and I say, I know I said this earlier, and you guys didn't look like you really agreed with me. So let me try again. So that's the type of thing I'll be doing if I'm rehearsed and I'm feeling comfortable and I'm paying attention. I'll adjust the speech as I go to make it better. If I'm not rehearsed enough, I can't do it because I'm still worried about what's the line comes again. I'm not sure I remember this bit well. So, but again, I think for most new people, you will have the lines coming again, and you should just try and relax into telling your story or giving your message. Let's not ask too much of themselves in the beginning because it does take a long time to get comfortable with this stuff.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. This question is from my side. That one body language communication that can literally shift your energy
Mm.
from feeling very underconfident to feeling very confident, because we communicate, non-verbally as well through our body
Mm.
language. What is that one shift, one posture, something
Mm.
that can instantly shift the energy?
So there's a lot of people that buy into the whole power poses thing. You
Yeah.
stand there. I'm not
Yeah.
sure I buy into that, at least not for me. But it is true that every time I stand up on stage, I will stand, legs slightly apart, arms loose at my sides. I'll make myself as big as I can. I'll smile. I look at everyone. What I'll never do on stage is I'll never cross my arms. I'll never put my hands in my pockets. I'll avoid doing what a lot of people do, which is, you put your hands in front of you and you do things like this. And
I do that all the time.
because you're doing is you're closing your body language, right? So
Okay.
I have an Italian family, so my hands keep doing nonsense stuff all the time, and I basically can't stop it. But I
Yeah.
try to just stay as open as possible, and
Okay.
you look at the audience, and you get slightly closer to people. You don't need to physically get closer. You just lean forward a bit, and it just creates that sense of connection. Standing still is very powerful at times. So a lot of new people move too much. So what I tend to advise people is know when to move with purpose. So for example, if your speech has very clear sections, maybe always start in the center, and then as you go into the first part of your story or speech, walk 2-3 steps to one side, stand there, look at that side of the audience a bit more, then walk 3 steps back to the middle, talk a little bit more there, and then you go to the other side, and then you finish in the middle. Those movements will cover you for about 7 minutes, 10 minutes. That's all you need to move on stage. So I think just standing still and keeping your body language open, and gesturing to the audience as you would with speaking to friends, that's the best thing you can do. Is remember to try and communicate as if you were at a bar or whatever passes for you as a social event, and not as if you were on Broadway. Right? So it's not about my friends when because no one speaks like that, right? So you should
Okay.
say, when you go to the supermarket and you're trying to find something that's just not there, just kind of be as natural as you can,
Natural.
which is a very unnatural environment, but try to be as natural as you can in that unnatural environment.
This one actually really hit me because I use a lot of this. I use a lot of this, so I know what you're saying, what you're talking about. But
And,
okay,
and
keep that.
a bit of it is fine. I mean, everybody has gestures
Yeah,
that
I am.
everybody has stock gestures. So I do this one again. Might be slightly inappropriate, but I do this gesture, which
Yeah.
seems like I'm holding balls, let's just say, right? So I do this gesture, and I'm not sure why, but I do it all the time. And some people do many things, and then you nickname the gestures, right? There's the penguin, and you've got there's emoji, which is I don't know what's going on, like there's some
Yeah.
people who do those things all the time, or there's the hands. This is the Angela Merkel gesture.
Yeah.
there's all these things that, as long as you don't do them all the time, or you don't do them for a very long, if you do this and you separate your hands, that's fine. If you do this and you separate your hands, fine. What you just don't want to do is spend half of your speech doing this.
Right.
Because
Right.
people notice and starts annoying them. It's like, just, that thing with your hands, you just keep doing, like if I adjust my glasses 10 times during a speech, it starts getting annoying to other people and it makes me look nervous, because that's what it is. It's a nervous
Right.
gesture.
Right. Right. Okay. I'll keep that in mind. This is actually a very important question for me. Yeah. And the last question: how do you end the show?
How do I end it?
Yeah, because if the beginning has been so impactful, you should
Yeah.
always leave the audience, equally stunned. So how should you end the show?
Okay. So the way I structure speeches is that at the beginning, you're trying to grab people's attention. You don't necessarily need to be 100% on message right at the beginning. But then what
Right.
comes after is you want to connect to the audience by making it clear to them why what you're going to talk about is relevant. Then you need to know what your main message is. Right. So I like to think of the message as separate the message in two parts. So let's say that my message is, so I did a speech once about doing things that scare you. So the message was, a life that scares you is a life that's worth living. So that is the final message. So what I want to do at the beginning is I want to give a preview of that message. Do you do things that scare you? Or have you stopped doing important things because they scare you? So when I get to the end, I'm going to make the message very clear. So, we call this the lessons learned part of the message. So you told all your story and say, and that's when I learned that. And then you give your message. Normally, you want to have a bit of a call to action. So my challenge to you is that think of one thing you're scared of. Maybe it's speaking in public. Maybe it's calling that friend of yours you had a fight with a long time ago and haven't spoken for a while. Maybe it's having a freezing cold shower, right? Whatever that thing is, do it today, right? So, just give them something sort of easy to do that they can actually do today or tomorrow, that generates an action. If they actually do that thing, they remember your speech for years. Right? So you give the lessons, you give a call to action, and then you just end with something that sort of closes that circle with the beginning. Right? So you say if I started the speech talking about, what did I do with that one? All you're trying to do is, if you started talking about fear, finish talking about fear, right? So you started talking about all the things people are scared of. Then you want to finish and saying something like, and fear sometimes is just the way our mind tells us that something is important.
Right.
So we should stop running away from it and running towards it, right? Something like that, right?
Right.
Start about fear, finish about fear. Started with an important question, kind of answer that question at the end. And that you're not, all you want them to feel is, okay, there was a lesson in the speech, there was a clear message there. If it's suitable, you've given them something to do, and then you close the message. What you never want to do is bring in a new idea or use a quote that is a
That's
different
not
quote.
related to it.
Yeah. So, I wouldn't start with a quote and end with a quote, but if you didn't start with a quote, you can end with a quote. Just find an intelligent sounding quote that is similar to your message and use that, and I want to leave you with the words of this person. And then you give the quote, and that's it. And then you shut up. Right? That's a very important part of finishing. Shut up. Smile and just stand there. Right? And people will start clapping normally, and then you stand there and just smile. And then you do that for a little bit, and then you just look to whoever introduced you, and usually they'll be coming on stage to shake your hand or whatever. Right? But you don't do it. Normally, I don't thank people at the end of a speech. Normally, some environments that make sense, but you don't normally have to thank people. And just shake the hands of whoever introduced you, and you walk off stage. But you don't run away. A lot of people run away. They finish and they go, "Thank you," and run away. All right.
Yeah. So
Right.
basically, one should actually complete the whole circle, like from where you started and then complete.
A message needs to be 100% clear. If
Right.
suitable, you should give them something to do.
Right.
And then you just want to end with a message that is inspirational, that is meaningful, that is funny, whatever your major theme is, and it should sound like the beginning.
Right.
Maybe
Right.
the beginning was a question that you
Right.
didn't know the answer, and then you just
Right.
answer that question in the beginning, in the end. Right?
Yeah.
So, there's this thing we say when you're writing speeches, which is if you know the end, you know the
Yeah.
beginning, and if you know the beginning, you know the end. So you just have to figure out one of them.
Yeah. Okay. What you said actually reminded me. I don't know if you watched this movie called 1917. In this movie, this
No, I haven't yet. No.
so they started the way they started their first scene,
Mm.
right? A lot of the story progresses and a lot of things happen, and the movie ends on the same scene. And
Every movie, every
thing
movie,
itself was like, oh my god! I mean,
every
they just
movie.
did that. It was
Yeah,
amazing.
Saving Private Ryan starts with old Ryan at the cemetery crying for his brothers that died, and it ends in the exact same scene. Ends at the cemetery. So almost every movie that is, if it's a one movie, it's not like two, three movies. The beginning will always have something to do with the end because then it
Yeah.
closes the story. It's just the most basic narrative tool ever is, begin with the ending and then tell your story, or begin with something that feels like the ending. You
Right.
could begin with a scene where it's you and your son in the bedroom talking, and then you end. And maybe you're fighting in the bedroom, and then you end having a nice conversation in the bedroom, right? So is
Mm.
that's what you're trying to do? Is the same scene, but it's slightly different.
Basically, we connected.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Okay. So now, since we've spoken a lot about public speaking, I would also want some insights from your book that you have, Bear, the Guide to Brutally Honest Public Speaking. First of all, I always used to think that, if you're being brutally honest in front of the public, that can actually backfire.
Mm.
But
Oh,
I read
it definitely can, which is why I use the term in a way that is a bit misleading, because when
yeah.
I talk about brutal honesty, I talk about being brutally honest about yourself. And
Okay.
so I'm using brutally honest as an extreme form of vulnerability. So that's what I usually mean by brutally honest, is if I feel that if I'm afraid of something, I'm going to talk about it in the most honest way I can possibly talk about, and I'm not going to care about how brutal it sounds to me. Right, what I don't do is, and I don't advise people to do, is go up there and say things that could be massively offensive and don't
Right.
care about other people's feelings, because that is just, if nothing else, is counterproductive. Right? It's
Right.
also rude. But that's what I mean. And anyone that looks at the cover of the book will see that the cover of the book is a guy dressed in a suit, opening the
Yeah.
suit,
Yeah.
and it's just his heart showing there. So that's the
Yeah.
idea. Is you bearing yourself. Right?
Yourself.
So yeah, you're right. It would be difficult and it would be offensive to just say stuff and offend people and not care about it. Seems to be very popular if you're a politician, but for normal people, I don't recommend it. But what I'm suggesting is be brutally honest about yourself. So be very vulnerable and don't be afraid of saying things that some people might think, oh, hold on, you're showing too much. Right? I think that that's actually where the most powerful stuff in public speaking is.
Right. And I also love the introduction which I read on the website of yours, finding similarities between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Javier Bardem can make you a good public speaker. I mean, that introduction would really caught my attention. I was like, actually, one book one should read. It was really nice.
I'll give you one of those, which is the Arnold Schwarzenegger part. Is I think I said Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, and Javier Bardem.
Yeah, yeah.
The Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone reference is that I don't know if you remember any of their first movies. I mean, you
Huh.
look a little younger than me, but when I was a kid, we watched stuff like Rambo, right, or Rocky, and
Right.
the Schwarzenegger's first one was like the Terminator, right? And
Right.
I mean, they weren't good actors, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they clearly had no natural talent for it.
Right.
But what they had to do was learn their lines and rehearse.
Yeah.
So there's a part of the book when I talk about rehearsing, and I say, listen, if Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone managed to build a movie career, clearly having no natural talent for memorizing lines and sounding
Yeah.
natural and doing so, you have no excuse.
Wow, that was good actually.
I'll,
Yeah,
I'll
that's
leave I'll leave the Javier
good.
Bardem for people who read the book because it's too long to explain now. But the Javier Bardem is a more meaningful point than that.
Yeah. So where can people find your book? How can they order if they want to?
It's on Amazon, so it's on
Amazon.
both on paperback and Kindle. I'm not 100% which countries. There's some countries that they won't deliver on paperback, but
Okay.
Kindle you can buy anywhere.
Okay. Perfect. And tell the viewers where they can find you, how they can reach out to you if they want to get in touch with you.
The easiest way to connect with me is LinkedIn. I post pretty much every day. Not always something about public speaking or storytelling, but most is about public speaking and storytelling and just general nonsense that amuses me. And they can connect with me there. And if they want to look me up online, they can look for my name on YouTube, or they can just go to my website. And the easiest way to find my website is storypowers.com, because my name is
Sorry.
too complicated to remember and spell. So,
I actually found your website through the name itself.
yeah, you can. It's franciscomahfuz.com will get you there. Storypowers.com will also get you there.
Superb, superb. Thank you so much, Francisco. It's again, I think I always exceed the time limit that I set for, but the conversation, whatever I was getting to learn from you, whatever insights I got today about public speaking, and I'm sure all our viewers as well, because this would be put up on Facebook and people would watch it, I think it was just such a flow. Whatever you said, each and everything was so important for all of the people who are trying to become a good public speaker. Like there was such hacks, there was such processes that you put in place to understand better that okay, how can that I thought that okay, let's just not focus at time, let's just keep flowing this conversation. So thank you so much. This is one of the first starting episodes of Step Up with Natasha. Thank you so much for giving me your time, and I hope you had a good time over here.
Listen, there's one not very well kept secret of public speaking, which is it gives you the opportunity to speak to other people, sometimes to a lot of other people that actually like what you're saying and think you make sense. I've been married for 12 years. I don't always have that experience at home with my wife or with my 3-year-old. So talking to people that want to listen to me and appreciate what I'm saying is always
Especially in the quarantine where you can't go out.
it's always very refreshing. I mean, the cat right now is giving me the dirtiest of looks because I've sat here for an hour and 27 minutes and not patted her once. So, I have to get the love somewhere else.
No, I'm sure all the viewers as well, I guess, loved you. In fact, people has been saying that brilliant insights. So I guess that's what brings the end of the show. But I loved each and every moment of our conversation over here. There was so much of things that I learned, and I would take care of my hand gestures as well from now on, which you pointed out. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. And everyone, now you know where you can find him, reach out to him, order his book if you want to. I think that's a really good read. And thank you so much, Francisco. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.